You know, it was May 2022, and Milan and Inter were locked in a title race in the last game of the season. All eyes were on Milan and Inter's title race, a title race that was eventually won by Milan. Elsewhere, Napoli was playing against Spezia, and by then, the title race was over for Napoli. You see, after an incredible 3-horse race for most of the season, Napoli fell off. It was another season of being a bridesmaid, never the bride. Another season of being brilliant, but not making it to the altar.
Oh shit, here we go again.
That being said, this season, Napoli has turned it around and is keen to go all the way. By the time the World Cup started, they were still unbeaten in the league and on top of Serie A, and were already so many games in, and finishing first in the Champions League in a tricky group, with statement wins against Liverpool and Ajax, a 4-1 win against Liverpool, a 6-1 win against Ajax, and winning 3-0 twice against last season's Europa Cup finalists. I mean, look at that form. That's honestly impressive. That's just incredible. And it's not even about the results. These guys do it in style with a positive brand of football. So in this video, I'm gonna have Napoli talk on this channel. And we're gonna talk about what the heaven is happening in Napoli. He is, in my opinion, the leading voice when it comes to all things Napoli. I'm gonna leave his channel in the description below. Feel free to check it out. But the question is, how did Napoli turn into one of the most exciting teams in Europe? What changed from last season to this season? Well, to answer that, we gotta go back, all the way back to Napoli's last game of the season against Spezia. It's the last game of the season, and Napoli is crushing Spezia 3-0 by halftime. And that game was special too, but not due to a title race. You see, despite an impressive run of games, the title race was over for Napoli by then. This game was the last time that Napoli fans had the chance to watch Lorenzo Insigne and Dries Mertens, who were due to leave at the end of their contracts in summer. We're literally talking about the captain and the all-time goal scorer of Napoli. We didn't know it then, but this was also Kalidou Koulibaly's last game in a Napoli shirt. With the departure of these three legends, the heart and soul of Napoli was ripped out of the team. What was going on in your head when you guys lost Insigne, Mertens and Koulibaly all in one summer?
Yeah, actually the situation was even worse than that because we also lost key players like Fabian Ruiz and Ospina. Ospina was the second best goalkeeper after Magnan last season. Fabian Ruiz was the player that was scoring the most goals outside of the box in all of Europe last season. So, I mean, yeah, the focus is on those three players, but there was actually 5 really important starters that left. So that's half the team pretty much. Obviously, Insigne leaving was no surprise because he signed for Toronto back in December. And actually, I didn't like him at all last season, so I was quite happy to see him leave from a personal point of view. I know that there's some Insigne fanboys, but I didn't like the fact that a captain was leaving a team in December. And I didn't like his performances. He wasn't scoring from open play. He was just scoring on penalties and actually missed a few penalties. So no disrespect to what Insigne did to Napoli over the years, especially the season before that, where he was fantastic. But the 21-22 season, I just couldn't wait for Insigne to leave. And I was super excited with Kvara coming in. I made a video about him back in April when he was relatively unknown. And when I dug into the player, I thought, wow, we've got something here. So I was excited for that transition. Mertens leaving and Koulibaly leaving, I was much more worried about. Mertens, maybe not as much as Koulibaly because Mertens wasn't being used that much by Spaletti anyways. The real issue for me was Koulibaly and Ospina because our backup goalkeeper Meret had howlers last season and his distribution was never that good. So the thought of having Meret in goal was quite scary. And credit to him, you know, he stepped it up this year, improved a lot. And then Koulibaly leaving, I mean, he was a rock in defense over the years, a leader on the field, I think more so than Insigne, even though Insigne wore the armband. And yeah, just I think the real world-class player that Napoli had. Like, he was just a cut above.
Despite these departures, Napoli is standing tall on top of the table in Serie A. They replaced Koulibaly with Kim Min-jae from Fenerbahce, who's really been near flawless this season. Honestly, this is a transfer that surprised me the most, replacing a world-class defender with an unknown player not many have heard about.
Replacing him with a relatively unknown player such as Kim, Wow, that was scary. I don't think many people knew Kim, but he showed that he's disciplined, he's fit, he pays attention, and actually he's been performing better than Koulibaly has over a period of 15 games, because Koulibaly, whilst he has always been a great player, he's never been on a 15-game run where he's just been that consistent. He would have 3 or 4 amazing games and then one game where he was quite average. Whereas Kim has just been like a 9 out of 10 performance, just every single game. So it's really surprising for us. And yeah, that was, I think, the key player that we could have lost, which could have made a difference, but we replaced them fantastically.
They also brought Raspadori, who's one of the brightest young stars in Italian football, and the midfield trio of Lobotka, Anguissa, and Zielinski complete each other better than peanut butter and jelly. They're not exactly household names, which is what makes Napoli's season even more impressive. I could name so many standouts in this Napoli squad, but none of them steal more headlines than Kvaratskhelia. I swear this guy must be a commentator's worst nightmare. Kvaratskhelia has been one of Europe's prime wingers this season, with 8 goals and 10 assists in 17 games before the World Cup break. Napoli fans even nicknamed him Kvaradona, after, well, Diego Maradona. You know you've done well at Napoli if you're being compared to God himself. I mean, look at that. He's literally toying with the defenders, and he's been doing that all season long. And hey, it also makes it an easier name to pronounce, rather than the full name. It's not, dude. I had to rehearse two weeks for this. I swear, and I still get it wrong.
A few moments later.
Kvaratskhelia. Are you surprised at how well this guy has adapted at Napoli?
Yes, because from day one, he was absolutely fantastic for us. I mean, I knew that he was a gem of a player because he was a guy that, yes, he was playing in Eastern Europe, but when it came to the national team, he scored important goals against Sweden, Spain, North Macedonia, and was man of the match in those performances. So I knew that he had it in him to be a big player for the big stages, but I didn't expect him to score, assist, dribble so well from day one. That's the thing that really surprised me. I knew that he was someone that could come really good for us, but the quickness was incredible. Even though on the first few games he was a little rough. For the first 3 games of the season, he had the worst dribbling percentage rate in all of Serie A. He was basically not getting anything right when it comes to dribbling. But then that 1 time out of 10 that he got it right, it was just fantastic. Just absolutely opened up the play for us, allowed us to then score goals. And he was just such a complete player compared to, for example, Insigne. So he plays in that same position, but athletically, he's so much better. He's quicker. He is more direct. Insigne loved to keep the ball. He was not the type of guy that you could really counterattack with, because he loved to stop it, put it onto his right foot, and then maybe he would find that perfect pass, but just slowed the game down by a second or so. Whereas Kvara is so direct and he can use his left foot, his right foot, and we saw his first goal for Napoli was a header. When have we seen Insigne score with headers? So all of a sudden we realized that on that left-hand side, we just had so many more options now with Kvara compared to what we had last season. And again, no disrespect to Insigne, but I just think that we had a one-trick pony before, and now all of a sudden we have this hugely versatile guy that the opposition doesn't even know about. So, for them, especially in the first few games of the season, they didn't know what hit them on that left-hand side. So yeah, very impressed by Kvara.
In the past decade alone, Napoli finished 2nd place 4 times and 3rd place 3 times. So you can tell they've always been in or around the title challenge, even when Juventus was dominating the league for nearly a decade. As brilliant as they've been, they've always lacked that final piece of the puzzle to win the league. And when they did, no one could really dismantle Juventus at the time. They even had 91 points in 2018, usually enough to win a league title, only to finish 2nd place, 4 points below Juventus. That being said, this season, things are different. There's something different about this Napoli team. They're more ruthless. They've got more belief in themselves. By the time the World Cup started, they were still unbeaten in the league and finished on top of a group that had Liverpool, Ajax and Rangers in it. Did you expect Napoli's season to go this well, both domestically and in Champions League?
No, obviously we didn't expect this to go this well. And actually, if you look at the third and fourth game of the season, we had 2 draws. So yes, we started off well with a couple wins, but then we immediately drew against Lecce and we drew against Fiorentina. So within the first 5 games, you're thinking, all right, we're going to win some, we're going to draw some, we might end up losing some, right? And then all of a sudden we go into this run where we just keep winning and winning and winning and winning and winning, and it just never stops. And yeah, that's not to be expected, taking a look at the first 5 games of the season. But you know, the enthusiasm this year has been sky high. I think people were super impressed by our first 2 wins, 5-2 against Verona, and then a 4-0 against Monza. It brought the crowd back to the Maradona, which is something that had been missing in recent years. And then with regards to how Napoli was able to sustain that and whether they are going to be able to sustain that, I think they've got a better chance now than before. And it's not a physical aspect. You know, sometimes people will say teams will die down as the season goes on because maybe, you know, Spaletti pushes them too hard or physically they can't cope. I think it's more of a mental aspect. And before in the team, I think we've always had players that understood what it would mean to win at Napoli and the pressure that comes with it. It's a huge pressure to win at Napoli. You've got a team that hasn't won in 30 years, one of the most passionate fans. It's the only club in the city, unlike in Milan, unlike in Rome, unlike in Turin, unlike in any really big city in Europe. This is a team that represents 6 million people, right, in this part of the world. It's huge support. And you know, when you haven't won in 30 years, the pressure builds. And it's a city, it's a region that really lives football. If you go out in the streets, you'll see Maradona t-shirts and paintings and murals everywhere. You know, people absolutely adore the club. And I think for players like Insigne, for players like Mertens and Koulibaly that had lived in Napoli for quite a while, they understood what it would mean, and I think their legs started to shake a little bit, you know, from December onwards. I feel like these guys that have come in, they're ignorant to this. They've got that bliss about them where they don't know how much it means to people, and that's a good thing. It means that they can go out on the field and be a bit more relaxed and not feel that same amount of pressure.
With the World Cup out of the way, we still have the business end of the season ahead of us. That being said, questions were raised when they lost to Inter in their first game back from the World Cup, eventually breaking their unbeaten run. The ghosts of the previous seasons were looming at large, but Napoli replied back with a stern performance by beating Juventus 5-1. Let me repeat that again, 5-1. That's quite a scoreline, my friend. Not to mention against Juventus.
Hasta la vista, baby.
I'm not a superstitious guy, but I think with Diego Maradona's Argentina winning the World Cup after 3 decades, Diego's Napoli might just as well win the league after 3 decades as well. Of course, as a Milan fan, I would like my own Milan to win the league. But should Milan fail to win it, then honestly, Napoli is the team I'd like to see win the league title. With your head and not your heart. How far can Napoli go this season? Is this a season where it finally happens?
I think this is a season where we've got a higher probability than in the past, just from a mathematical point of view of where we are in the table compared to other teams. It helps that we didn't have too many players at the World Cup. So in terms of fitness, we didn't have any injuries. We didn't, put too much load on the players. And the enthusiasm is high. We've already played away to a lot of teams. So we've played Lazio, Roma, Milan. We played Atalanta away. So we've got all the return fixtures at home, pretty much, all the tough ones. So it seems like we're on the right path. Having said that, you know, it's football. Anything can happen, and as I said, a lot of it does come down to mentality. And I think if they can keep themselves pressure free, if they can just go out there and have fun, then I think we'll make it. If they start feeling the pressure, then, you know, these guys are young. Maybe they'll crack as well. So it's just about Spalletti. Can he keep them? You know, can Spalletti keep the team ignorant to the outside world? He's got a tough job, because it's not going to be easy.
In the end, I gotta ask Domenico the most important question. This topic has been debated by the most brilliant minds in humanity. The likes of Aristotle and Socrates debated over this question. This is a debate that wars have been fought over, and sadly, lives have been lost, depending on which side of the debate you're on. So here's the question. Pineapple on pizza, yay or nay?
Absolute nay. Absolute nay. You can't ruin something that's already good. Why ruin it? There's no room for fruit on pizza. Vegetables, meat, yes. Fruit, absolutely not.